Began with the headline, small, almost easy to miss, rare cancer seen in 41 homosexuals. The New York Times, July 3, 1981. It wasn't front-page news, but for those watching closely, it was a warning.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine. That today from the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Topping the list of likely victims are male homosexuals who have many partners and drug users who inject themselves with needles.
As the deaths mounted, the press sharpened its tone. Gay plague, gay cancer, the wrath of God. The language of disease became the language of condemnation, and America listened.
Reverend Falwell, you've called for the closing of bathhouses and other measures, and you say you're calling for these measures to protect the health of the nation. But at the same time, you say AIDS is God's judgment on homosexual promiscuity.
I believe that God does not judge people, God judges sin. And I do believe that herpes is primarily caused by heterosexual promiscuity, and AIDS generally caused and believed to be caused by homosexual promiscuity. Is a violation, both of them, of God's laws of nature and decency, and as a result, God, who loves people, hates sin and deals, whether it's a drug addict or an alcoholic or someone who's living promiscuously as far as his or her moral life is concerned. We pay the price when we violate the laws of God.
In the absence of science, fear spoke loudest, and fear, fueled by ignorance, always needs a target.
This has always been known as a place that could accept people with different lifestyles, and certainly the gay lifestyle is a different lifestyle.
The people living in the area had no objection. When some gay people started to move in and started to make it a healthy climate economically and socially, they accepted us.
Well, there is love without sex, and very definitely sex without love.
But long before the headlines, there was joy. In the years after Stonewall, gay life emerged from the shadows. There were bookstores and bathhouses, church basements and marching bands. In cities like San Francisco, a revolution was blooming. But that wasn't always the case.
The Homosexuals, with CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace.
Homosexuality is an enigma. Even in this era of bold sexual mores, it remains a subject that people find disturbing, embarrassing, and the reluctance to discuss it. Yet there is a growing concern about homosexuals in society, about their increasing visibility. Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. The CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred. A vast majority believe that homosexuality is an illness. Only 10% say it is a crime. And yet, and here's the paradox, the majority of Americans favor legal punishment, even for homosexual acts performed in private between consenting adults.
Anita Bryant's leadership to defeat the law generated the national attention. In Victory last night, she talked about taking her anti-gay campaign on the road.
We have already been contacted by many communities and individuals all across the nation who have similar problems and are concerned and want our help.
Being gay could get you fired, arrested, or institutionalized. Until 1973, homosexuality was still classified as a mental disorder. Many lived double lives. Some didn't live long at all. But as Jim Downs reminds us, liberation didn't start in the nightclubs or parades. It was built in bookstores, in makeshift clinics, in groups of men and women who nursed one another before the world cared, who formed a movement long before the world would call it one. They weren't waiting for a parade. They were preparing for war.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, started as an exclusively gay disease.
And they found that as many as 85% of otherwise healthy gay men showed evidence of imbalance in these tests of the immune system. We suspect from our experience here that we would find a similar finding.
Given the incubation period of 2 years, there could be a major epidemic in the near future.
In 1982, the CDC had a name: Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. What they didn't have was time. By 1983, the numbers were climbing. Hundreds dead, thousands sick. The virus was spreading, but the story remained the same. Gay men were dying, and America looked away. It was a punchline in the press room. As Randy Schultz wrote in And the Band Played On, the story of the epidemic is the story of the decades-long neglect of the people it affected first. The virus exposed more than immune systems. It revealed a nation's indifference. With no help from the government, gay communities turned inward, forming crisis centers, buddy programs, food deliveries, and hospice care. We were on our own health system, said activist and author Jim Downs. We did what the state refused to do.
Living with AIDS in this country is like living in the Twilight Zone. Living with AIDS is like living through a war which is happening only for those people who happen to be in the trenches. Every time a shell explodes, you look around and you discover that you've lost more of your friends. But nobody else notices. It isn't happening to them. They're walking the streets as though we weren't living through some sort of nightmare. And only you can hear the screams of the people who are dying and their cries for help. No one else seems to be noticing.
Never be silent again! Never be silent again! Release the drugs now! Release the drugs now! NIH, let's go! Storm the NIH! This is war! For the sick! For the poor! Act up! Fight back! Fight AIDS!
In 1987, a new group formed with one simple message: silence equals death. ACT UP, the AIDS coalition to unleash power, channeled grief into fury. They shut down Wall Street, they occupied the FDA, they lay down in the streets in front of churches and city halls, screaming to be seen. They weren't asking for permission, they were demanding a future.
This huge quilt that today is being spread out on the Capitol Mall in Washington has 2,000 panels, every one crafted by the friends and relatives of an AIDS victim. This memorial, the size of 2 football fields, is the brainchild of San Franciscan Cleve Jones.
So we want to show the President and the Congress and the rest of the country the enormity of this epidemic. And with our quilt, we hope to show that enormity by providing people with a glimpse of the faces that are behind all of the statistics.
To date, the AIDS virus has claimed over 24,000 lives, the majority homosexual men.
Gay people in this country are aware that we are always threatened by physical violence and that the potential for discrimination in housing and employment is always there. The unfortunate thing now is that this epidemic is being exploited by preachers and politicians of the far right who deliberately are inflaming ignorance and hysteria against gay people under the guise of concern about an epidemic.
In 1987, Cleve Jones, who had already lost dozens of his friends, stitched a name onto a piece of fabric. One name became 10, 10 became 100, then thousands. The AIDS memorial quilt told the truth the government would not. Every panel a life, every stitch a refusal to forget. It was impossible to ignore. Row after row, name after name, lovers, brothers, sons. The quilt wasn't just a memorial, it was a revolution stitched in thread.
Van Jones. Eric Shanta Rowell.
Harvey Fierstein, actor, writer, AIDS activist.
When the Clintons walked the mall in 1996, it marked a turning point. For the first time, the President of the United States acknowledged what his predecessors refused to see, that these were not strangers, they were Americans, and they were loved. And then through Princess Diana, a global stage was set.
First of all, let me say good after late afternoon. Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
On November 7th, 1991, HIV had a new face. It wasn't a gay man, it wasn't a drug user, it was Magic Johnson, champion, husband, father. The myth that HIV was someone else's disease was shattered on live television.
It happened to Kimberly Bergalis, and suddenly almost everyone felt at risk. Last summer, federal authorities documented that the 22-year-old Florida resident was the first person in the United States to contract AIDS during dental treatment. The Centers for Disease Control kept her identity secret, but she chose a public stand.
If this can be prevented from happening to another family, then that needs to be done.
By the mid-90s, the epidemic looked different. The fastest growing groups of new infections were no longer white gay men. They were women, Latinx youth, poor communities, the incarcerated. In cities like Baltimore and Atlanta, whole neighborhoods were buried in silence.
Ryan got AIDS from a blood-clotting agent used to treat his hemophilia. It's estimated that more than 10,000 hemophiliacs contracted AIDS before better blood screening procedures were adopted.
When I was born, I was HIV positive. And when I turned 5, I had symptoms of AIDS. I had fungus in my brain, blood infections, pneumonia. I went cold blue a couple of times. And that's when I was about 5, they said I was full-blown AIDS. And right now I'm doing really good.
But who got treatment? Who got attention? In Stand By Me, Historia Jim Downs chronicles how the history of the epidemic erases many. Women caregivers, undocumented immigrants, trans people, those who nursed the dying but rarely made the headlines. Some lives, he wrote, were deemed more grievable than others.
I didn't start getting sick until in '92. So I left the city and I went up to the Russian River and
sort of went there to die.
Yeah, I did go there to die, and I didn't want to die in the city with. I just wanted to be alone. And then Mark Conant called me one day and said, I want you to try some medication. It was the fall of '94, and my T cells were down to 23.
Right.
And Marcus Conant put me on a combination of low-dose AZT plus 3-TC and DDC. And I bounced back.
In 1996, something changed. The combination drug therapies worked, the death toll began to drop, and a generation that expected to die began, tentatively, to live. But surviving brought its own trauma.
I want to be very clear. My heart was full of anger and hate, fear and despair. All my friends were dying. The government did nothing. Our churches kicked us out. Our families abandoned us. It seemed that the world was totally unwilling to look at what was going to happen. And the one nation on earth that had the power and the resources and the institutions and the knowledge to stop this failed utterly, because it was a gay disease. And then when we found out other people were dying, they were black. And this combination of homophobia and racism prevented us from moving the world forward to confront the crisis.
The crisis had changed, but it was far from over. The stigma remained, funding dried up, complacency set in. AIDS was no longer front-page news, but people were still dying.
Dr. Deborah Prasad is passionate about the prospects of a medical breakthrough. And there seems to be new hope for babies that are born HIV positive.
We're on a mission to find a cure for AIDS, but this is going to be a very long road.
In 1996, the tide turned. Antiretroviral therapy, or ART, transformed HIV from a death sentence to a manageable condition. And by 2012, a new tool emerged: PrEP, a daily pill to prevent infection altogether. Science had succeeded where politics had failed, but access still told the same story. Today, the virus still moves along fault lines of inequality. In the American South, infection rates rival those of the early epidemic. Black gay men, trans people, incarcerated people, the poor, they are the new frontline. The virus changed, but the systems didn't.
Try to look straight at me.
The first time I found out that I was HIV positive, I was 13, I was in the 7th grade, and I found out because I refused to take my medication unless I knew why I was taking medication.
Maurice's mother died from complications of AIDS. She never talked with him about the virus or his condition.
However, a new generation has taken up the fight, armed with knowledge, technology, and purpose. But they inherit an epidemic still shaped by silence. 40 million have died globally. Millions more live with HIV today.
People that are educated and worth your while in the first place are not going to reject you on the basis of your HIV status. I feel like now what so much more of my insecurity and discomfort comes from is like the general stigmatization that the HIV positive community faces, and what other people who are dealing with like the various bureaucratic hurdles in terms of accessing your healthcare depending on your state, because the HIV social safety net is just so woefully unbalanced in this country. And people that are living in poverty, people that are dealing with drug addiction, people that are dealing with the whole myriad of issues. There's just so many ways in which the HIV positive community is unfairly targeted that really bothers me now, that I, feel very important to speak about to help further equality for people living with HIV.
The quilt still grows. It stretches across years, borders, and identities. A reminder that AIDS is not history, it is present. And that silence is still its most deadly accomplice. In When We Rise, Cleve Jones wrote, "The first time I saw someone die, I didn't know what it was. But by the time it ended, I had seen hundreds. We kept their names alive with our voices, our hands, and our hearts." The story of AIDS is the story of America, of who it loves, who it fears, and who it chooses to see. And the story is not over. Not until every life matters. Not until every silence is broken.
The quilt, to me, when I see it, I see 35 years from the horrors of my friends dropping dead day after day. It's one of the few physical manifestations of the AIDS crisis that I can look at and say, I see the entire story right here.
Feel the rumors follow you from Monday all the way to Friday dinner. You got one day of shelter, then it's Sunday, hell to pay, you young lost sinner. Well, I've been there sitting in that same chair, whispering that same prayer 500,000 times. It's a lie though, burying disciples. One page of the Bible isn't worth a life. There's something wrong.